Hello, it's editing Angelia. I thought I was done and then I suddenly remembered this is the last video I'll be filming before my appearance on the Monday Night Live show with Alan and Greg. Alan from Big Heart Books and Classics, Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads. They have a Monday night show, a Monday Night Live on YouTube. If you've never watched it, it is great fun. All kinds of great talk with booktubers, and I was on it once last year, and I'm going to be on it again Monday night, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, and whatever time that is where you are. So I hope you can stop by and watch for a while, drop some comments in the chats. It's always a really good time. That is on Monday night, August 26th. Okay, on to the rest of the video. Have a great weekend. Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and it's time for Friday Reads on August 23rd. Loud air conditioner. It's been over 100 degrees every day this week. Loud air conditioner will continue. If you watch Melinda's channel, Web of Stories, you know about Boring Corner, and I have Loud Air Conditioner Corner. So that's just how it is. So I hope you've had a good week. Mine has been pretty good, although it has been kind of like a bag of candy that melted and fused back together. Like the days is just kind of this cycle of hotness, maybe because it's in hot, and then we've been watching the convention, and so we're like, what day are we on? Is this the last day? So that has actually wrapped up now. As far as TV viewing, that kind of dominated the week. But we saw the first episode last night of Dark Winds, which was recommended to me quite a ways back, like last year sometime, by Sonia from Enthusiastic Reader. Now it's come to Netflix, and she apprised me of that a week or two ago, and now it is dropped this week. So we watched the first episode last night, and it started out really good. So I'll talk more about it next week when I have seen a good chunk of it. We're going to jump right into the book section of the video now because I have several books. It looks like a big pile, but I think I don't know. A lot of these were books that were sort of underway last week, but now I have finished them. And then I have like what I'm working on right now. So first of all, the first book, let's get the disappointment out of the way. I finished reading The Other Valley by Stuart somebody, I can't remember. I'm going to put his name up on the screen. And this was Stuart, it's a 3-part name. Howard is in it, maybe? Anyway, I'll put it up there. This was a library book, and I sent it back already. And I talked about it last week when I was in the midst of it, and it just didn't step up to the mark for me. So this was a speculative fiction book about a world where there's 3 valleys, and the one that you're oriented in, that you live in, and then there's one that's 20 years in the future, one that's 20 years in the past, and the borders are highly controlled because they don't want people coming in and out and trying to change destiny and messing up the timeline. So you have to apply and be granted like this escorted view if you have a valid reason for wanting to look at something from the past or the future. Now, very few of these are granted. So it's one of those stories where at the beginning, a bunch of teenagers are coming of age and they're going to be sorted into their future jobs. And our main character, who is Odile or Odile, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, she witnesses one of these border visits, and she's not supposed to recognize who it is, but she does. And so she knows that something's going to happen to a person that she knows. Like, there's no other reason somebody would be coming back to the past to look at this other person unless they're not alive in the future. This all happens right at the beginning. The problem with the book was the premise was super interesting, and I had all these ideas and strands in my mind of what maybe was going to happen and what was really going on with these borders and the people in charge. And I had a million interesting ideas, and none of them were what the plot was. The plot stuck to the basics, like the thing that happens at the beginning kind of permeates the whole story, and there's no examination of this world and its systems, and it's just this one singular story, and it wasn't compelling enough, and even that left tons of explain threads. I got to the end and I kept looking back and thinking I had missed something that was supposed to make this all come together and be kind of like, wow. And it just kind of wasn't there. So it was underwhelming. I felt like he had a great idea and he didn't go far enough. It was kind of slight in my opinion. So I was disappointed in The Other Valley. Then we get into my Garbagas selection, which was Captain Underpants and the Sensational Saga of Sir Stinks-a-Lot. And this doubled up also as a banned book. So I think it's kind of funny to see Captain Underpants with a bunch of talking tabs. Captain Underpants is a long-running series by Dave Pilkey. And as a former school librarian, I can say this was a very popular series. This and also his Dogman graphic novel series. But Captain Underpants is definitely Garbagas material for kids. It's junky and it's funny and it's just fun. There's a whole history of the books being banned or challenged because mainly historically because of all of the lowbrow humor. Lots of bathroom jokes, toilet jokes, fart jokes. I mean, the subtitles alone, there's the perilous plot of Professor Poopy Pants. My favorite one is The Wrath of the Wicked Wedgie Woman. I mean, just the titles. And that's probably as far as most book challengers get, is they just look at the title and think, oh no, that's just inappropriate. So I think everybody at all levels wants a mix of reading. Sometimes you want comfort reads, sometimes you want junk, sometimes you want something more challenging. Kids are no different than adults in that regard. And nobody is going to read Captain Underpants and only Captain Underpants for the rest of their life. If you just let the obsession play out, they eventually will move on to something else. This particular one got challenged for a couple of other things. That he was accused of having, guess what, a woke agenda in this book. So let's take a peek. So this book, the basic premise of Captain Underpants is there's these two kids named George and Harold. And George and Harold are best friends and they love to draw comics. And they have a really mean school principal, but I can't remember how it all begins, but something happens where he has a curse on him or something. If they snap their fingers, he turns into Captain Underpants and he starts avenging the very evil things that he himself would perpetrate in his normal everyday life. And so then all these different adventures ensue. In this book, at the beginning, Pilkey addresses some of the accusations basically by doubling down on him. And here's what it says. It's pretty funny. In the interest of pleasing all the grouchy old people, and then in parentheses, GOP out there, I have also included topics especially for them. So this adventure will contain references to healthcare, gardening, Bob Evans restaurants, hard candies, Fox News, and gentle yet effective laxatives. So sit back on your hemorrhoid pillows, turn up some music, Lawrence Welk, and grab a snack, black jelly beans that are all stuck together. It's time to enjoy the all-new, squeaky clean, fully appropriate, and non-offensive adventures of Captain Underpants. Well, as you can guess, that doesn't really hold up, because before you know it, the boys are back to their usual tricks, which are things such as rearranging school signs. So join us for Wednesday's math chat turns into enjoy a fart sandwich. The rearranging of the sign is an ongoing running joke. And so it doesn't matter what this book's about. It's absurd. But at one point, the boys have to go into the future and enlist the help of their adult selves. And this is where the next thing that got banned, specifically in this book, turns up. The year was 2015, and this was the new book of Captain Underpants coming out. I was still working as a librarian, and we would have the Scholastic Book Fair twice a year. And it was a great excitement. The kids loved the book fair. It was a big fundraiser for the school and for the library. And so if there was something new in the series, one of the series that the students loved, that was even more exciting. So a new Captain Underpants was going to be in the book fair. And the representative, we're setting up the fair and putting everything out. And she comes by to make sure everything's okay. And she says, oh, by the way, you might want to check Captain Underpants because some people have complained about this one. And she said, this one, you know, people are upset because they make fun of Republicans and then there's a gay part. Like, okay, so I already shared you the part about the GOP. Well, now let me show you the gay part. They go to the future to find their adult selves, and they're delighted and horrified because their adult selves are adults and they think, oh my gosh, we got old. And then they're delighted to find out that they're still best friends and that they are now actually writing the Dog Man graphic novels as their job. So that they're so happy about that. And everybody gets together. And here's the page that caused the stink. Chapter 22, the gang's all here. So somebody combed through Captain Underpants all the way up to page 111 to find this passage. Soon everyone had gathered together in old George's studio. Old George, his wife, and their kids, Mina and Nick, sat on the couch, while old Harold, his husband, and their twins, Owen and Kai, plopped down in the giant beanbag chair. Kids, said Mrs. Beard, I'd like you to meet your fathers. Okay, then the adventure goes on and the dads help them out. Nobody reacts or has any questions or comments about the fact that Harold has a husband and George has a wife. The kids do not care. Guess who else doesn't care? The real life students who love Captain Underpants. Nobody ever made any comment about this book. No parent, no kid, nobody cared. Everybody was fine. And really, the kids in real life are just like the kids in the story. The idea of being adults and getting married and having families is really just kind of so abstract and boring. They don't really care about that part. They just want to read the adventure story. So that was what the objection to this particular book. Like one page in the whole book, and then that part about the GOP, which is basically just the recurring humorlessness of that particular group of people. So now maybe I'm going to get banned too, along with Captain Underpants. But I had a good time revisiting this and remembering how much my students love these books, even though they are not fine literature and they're really dumb and repetitive and just a bunch of bathroom humor all strung together. But they are wonderful, garbogust fun for kids. The material now elevates a little bit, and I finished reading Thunderclap, a memoir of art and life and sudden death by Laura Cumming. And I have been reading this all month, and I really did have to take it slowly because it's not a long book, but there's a lot of material in here about Dutch art history. And that is not something, like, I like Dutch art, but it's not a particular passion of mine. I wasn't sitting around thinking, what I really want is a full-length book about Dutch art history. But that's what I got, but I got more as well because it's also interwoven with Laura Cumming's personal memoir about her life growing up with her father, who was also an artist, and introduced her to all of these Dutch artists to begin with, and parallels and memories. It's a very interesting structure. I looked up some of these artists, curiosity, wanting to know more about them and where some of their pieces are. I looked up her father and more about him, and I understand why it was on the women's nonfiction list. Something different than what I usually read, and I think it's a really great contender if you're looking for a book for the framed event in September about reading nonfiction and fiction about art. This would be a great selection to consider. Okay, then I read Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. I just finished this last night. I'm still kind of processing this book because it's kind of intense. So this is currently on the long list for the Booker Prize. I bought it several months ago. I got excited about it hearing reviews when it first came out, and then I didn't read it for a while. And I think because sometimes when you know the material is going to be kind of intense and heavy, it takes you a while to get to the right reading mood. But then its appearance on the Booker list kind of gave me that extra boost that I wanted to go ahead and read it now while it's sort of in the discussion. And I did read There There came out 5 years ago. It's a novel that is almost like interconnected stories forming a novel about a whole bunch of different people that are preparing to go to a powwow in Oakland. And they're all getting ready for the powwow in different for different reasons. Maybe they're going to perform at it, or they're going to be a vendor at it, or other reasons that they're going. And we're introduced to a pretty large cast of characters. Some of them are all within a certain family, and then there's other people as well. And so I did go back and read a summary of There because I remembered kind of what it was about, and I remembered how it ended. And that was it. And I also remembered that I liked the book, but I didn't, there was something about it that I didn't like, and now I can't remember. Like there was something that held me back from completely loving that book, but I liked it enough that I thought the author was strong and wanted to read him in the future, which the future is now. So I'd have to read the book again to find out what my problem was back in the day. Maybe I didn't like how it ended. I don't know. I went back and read a summary. If you read this book without reading the first one, you will hear references to the end of that book. So if you're reading this and thinking, well, then later on I'll read the other one, you're going to find out the ending. So you might just want to go ahead and read a summary of There. And this one focuses in on one particular family that was in the first book, and it's sort of a prequel and a sequel to There. Fortunately, there is also a family tree near the beginning of this book, after the prologue, and I had to refer to this several times to keep track, because the first half of this book takes place in the past. It's historical fiction about the background of this particular family. Then there is a big jump up to the contemporary time. And so it doesn't fill in the entire history. That's one thing. I thought this book was like a bigger sweep, like it was going to go all the way through all the generations up till now. But really it starts at the beginning of the family tree and goes up to a certain point, and then there's a big jump. So that was kind of a surprise. It's not bad or good. I just misperceived how it was going to be structured. So the first part is historical. We have Starr, who's later renamed Jude Starr, and he survives the Sand Creek Massacre, only to be captured and sent to a prison in Florida that was sort of a forerunner for the Indian schools, and which were later, the Carlisle School was founded by the same person who ran that prison, who's a character in this historical part of the story as well. So this part of the story is about survival, about this family that is constantly persevering through all kinds of assaults, massacres, incarceration, the institutional schools that try to eradicate their Indian languages, culture, religion, just everything, the way that they dressed and their appearance and their hair and everything, trying to make them assimilate into white culture. And this goes on for decades and decades in different forms, but this one family that we are focusing on continues to move forward, but the trauma keeps accumulating as they go. And then we jump up to the contemporary time, and we pick up right where There left off. And we are following the family of Opal Viola Victoria Bearshield, who is raising her great nephews. She is their adoptive grandmother. They're actually her sister's grandchildren, but her sister is struggling with substance abuse. And in fact, in the course of this story, she kind of rejoins the family at kind of a new and tender place in her sobriety, several months sober and working really hard to maintain that. This book is very much about addiction. Every generation of this family has struggled with it in different forms, and the book is actually dedicated for anyone surviving and not surviving this thing called and not called addiction. So depending on who we're talking about and where we are in history, this might be alcohol, this might be street drugs, this might be prescription drugs. It comes into play for different characters at different times and has different outcomes, but it permeates the story, and these issues of accumulated generational trauma and questions of identity. I've heard a couple of reviews of this story, and some people felt like the historical part was their favorite or was the strongest, and some people favored the more contemporary part. I am a team contemporary part of the story. When I was reading the historical part of the story, I thought that it was well written, it was interesting, but I wasn't sure where we were going with it. That was when I still thought we were just going to move through every successive generation. And there were certain parts of the story I felt were being left out. I thought it was going to be more about what happened at the schools, and rather than that being something that was frequently alluded to, but it was never actually set at the schools to any large extent. And then all of a sudden we're in the current day. Structurally, by the time I got to the end, I understood why it was like that, what he was doing, and that the holes and gaps and the parts of their family story that are almost mythologized, and then the parts of the story that are missing, that's kind of part of the point. And that we probably get more of the backstory that anybody in this family in the current day actually received. But then moving up to the contemporary part, this is where I really got locked in. So we had Opal, and then the 3 teenagers that she has taken in. Opal, it was a single woman with no children, and then all of a sudden she's raising 3 teenage boys, and she's doing the best she can. She loves these boys so much. She wants everything. She wants them to make it. She wants them to succeed. She makes mistakes, but she tries her best, and she's always there. And that's what she can give to these boys that nobody else has been able to supply in their lives. Not their mother, not their other grandmother. She's always there. And the struggle is very, very real. And she, you know what, she reminded me of a person that I met when I was teaching. We actually had a woman in our neighborhood, and Opal is a mail carrier. And I knew a lady who was a mail carrier in the neighborhood with her little mail truck. Also took in some nieces. And she didn't have any children. She and her husband were probably in their 50s and did not have children, and they sort of inherited some nieces that were elementary and middle school age, and those kids had been through some stuff, and she was the most patient, good-natured person, and she would ride through the carpool line in the mail truck, and the kids would hop out and come to school. And if you had to call her up about something that happened, she was so great. So Opal reminded me of that lady that I had met. Opal and her sister Jackie, and then the 3 boys, Orville, Luther, and Lonnie. Each of these kids have I think Luther only gets 1 chapter. He got a little shortchanged, but we have a lot of Orville and Lonnie, and then also a little bit of Sean, who is a friend of Orville's. These boys really made their way into my heart as I read this book. It's beautiful and intense and heartbreaking, and I know I've said intense several times, but it really is. There's many passages where I had to stop and just let it kind of trickle in, and then read that page again, what these boys were thinking and feeling. And all of them, they're tightly connected, but yet they also don't know each other. They all have things going on that they keep to themselves and don't fully reveal. Lonnie will absolutely rip you up. Orville, I think I felt like Orville like I did about Demon Copperhead, and just I was scared to read what was going to happen next, but I had to see what was going to happen next. I feel like by zeroing in on members of this one family, it became more personal, and I think maybe that was part of the problem with There is there were so many people, And this one, you just get really invested in this one particular family and hoping that these boys are going to make it through. So I really did enjoy this book a lot. I understand why it was selected for the list. I did feel that the two halves, I think I understand what he was doing, but it was kind of an odd juncture, and I did feel like the writing really shines in the contemporary part of the story more than the historical. But it was, I am glad that I read Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. So that brings me to the current reading. I am reading Forbidden Notebook by Alba de Cespedes, or Cespedes, I don't know. It's Italian. It's translated by Anne Goldstein, but it is about a woman who, it's very late 1940s, around 1950 in Italy, and the family, a middle-class family that's kind of tight on the money. They live in the apartment that they've always lived in since this couple got married, Valeria and Michel, and then they have these two college-age children. And so they're kind of tight. In fact, the living room is the daughter's bedroom. So there's no privacy. There's nowhere to go. Everybody's on top of each other. The kids have kind of entitled attitudes. They're kind of frustrated that money's always tight and they can't do everything that their friends are doing. The parents both work. They're getting by okay, but there's no extra. And so in the midst of all this, Valeria buys a notebook and she feels compelled to keep it hidden. She feels like her family, at first she feels that they'll make fun of her for writing a journal. And she even kind of tests it out and kind of talks about, well, what if I kept a journal? And everybody laughed and made jokes. So she feels like she needs something for herself and she wants to write her own thoughts. And so a lot of this book is about her trying to slip around and find little moments in the day where she could write and be left alone for a few minutes, because her days are kind of caught up with going to work and coming home and making dinner and doing things for her husband, doing things for her kids. She's pretty traditional. Even though she is working, she's also doing most of the things at home to keep the household going. And so she just squeezes out this little bit of time. And what's interesting in this book so far is what she thought the notebook was going to do for her, and then what's actually happening turned out to be quite different. And it's kind of distressing for her, because rather than capturing kind of like the highlights, like a Facebook offering of the snapshots of the good things going on, instead she starts, the process of writing is revealing to her dissatisfactions and anxieties with her current life. I'm going to stop there and save the rest of my discussion for next week. But it's interesting to me, the role of a notebook or journal, how in some books or movies, it's a very dangerous object. Like Winston's notebook in 1984, where he has to sit in that certain hidden spot to write in it. And Harriet the Spy, where her notebook gets caught up by her friends, and it's a big expose of her attitudes. This one is not so dangerous or so volatile at first. She doesn't have a terrible abusive husband or anything like that where she's trying to furtively record. It's kind of more, it's more like a Trojan horse. It kind of sneaks in and starts to take on a different role than what she thought. And it's a quieter kind of a story, but it's stealthy in its power. All right, so the other book that I am about to start today is, finally I'm going to read Kiss of the Spiderwoman by Manuel Puig, and this is a buddy read with Michael Clark. And we have been wanting to read this ever since we read Blackouts earlier in the summer. When was that? Was that late spring or early summer? And this was a book that influenced Justin Torres when he was writing Blackouts. And it is a book from 1976. It is about two men in an Argentinian prison, and one is entertaining them with retellings of movies that he has loved to pass the time. It's been made into a play, it's been made into a musical, it's been made into a movie. I saw that movie back in the 80s, But now I'm finally reading the book. All right, that is it. Coming up very soon, I'm going to have my not August, September TBRs. In addition to all the short stories, I have some other things planned and some events I'm going to participate in. So I'll be coming with that video, I think, on Monday or Tuesday. And until then, I hope you have an excellent weekend. Tell me what you're planning to read this weekend or what the highlight of your reading week was. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.